That would work better, wouldn't it? Yes! Woo! I love it when this happens, like a room full of technical folks, and this kind of stuff always seems to happen. Cool, all right, it's good to be back. I was here last year, and you guys are my favorite crowd. I've been, sorry, like I'm getting a little too excited here. You guys have probably seen this before, so I'll just skip over it. Hi, I'm Sebastian Stadil. I'm one of the founding members of the OpenTofu project. I'm the program chair as well for OpenTofu Day as part of the Linux Foundation. And finally, I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Stadil, which makes commercial products for OpenTofu. And so like I was saying, super excited to be here. Over the last, I'd say over the last 14 months, I have been on 4 different continents, have given presentations, I think about a dozen times. It's about like a rhythm of maybe once a month or so. This is what I remember from January of last year. You guys are my favorite crowd by far. Super enthusiastic. Loved the questions you guys asked and the energy you had. So thank you so much for having me again this year. All right, so it's been a crazy 18 months since this all started. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to talk a little bit about what the journey has been like, share some stories, and just go over some of the cool things that we've been working on. So this all started, before we start, can I get a quick show of hands here? I assume everyone's familiar to some degree with OpenTofu, but who actually uses it in some capacity? Excellent, so about half. And who still uses Terraform, is considering moving, but like hasn't actually made the step of doing that so far? All right, the other half. All right, so you guys are the ones I need to convince here. All right, so everything started really on August 12, 2023, when HashiCorp relicensed Terraform to a non-open source license. And it was super fun. Well, super fun, that's maybe the wrong word for it. It was super interesting because what happened is, like, when we saw the news, we and a bunch of folks that have been building solutions on top of Terraform, we had our initial reaction for all of us was, oh shit, what the fuck are we going to do now? Yeah, I guess you're going to write all the swear words now. That's not. Okay. Sorry. Thank you very much. Yeah, so got to be careful there. Sorry. So the initial reaction was, oh snap. And so for the first 24 hours or so, we were really scratching our heads, like, what are we going to do? And I remember my partner wanted us to go try some like boxing workout or something like that. So went with her, and like while I was there, I was just kind of thinking to myself, shit, like, is this better? Is this worse? I don't know. But like coming out of it, I felt really like there's a couple ideas I got out of it. One is there was a long-standing frustration I had with the way HashiCorp was developing Terraform, right? Very like single organization, like very opaque. We don't know what features we'll get into it. We don't know really like how we as a community can participate. They tell us we can comment on stuff, but really limited. So myself and some others that were building these commercial solutions on top of Terraform, all of us collectively were going, oh snap. And so what we decided to do is like, hey, this actually, we got on a Zoom call, and we decided that, yeah, that was an awkward first call, I can tell you that. But it was really interesting because the mood went from like pretty alarmed or like pretty worried to realizing that there's an incredible opportunity here to just carried the torch, right? Like Terraform is an open source project, love it. Sad that it's not open source anymore, but it's still a fantastic product. And so there's this opportunity to carry the torch and build an actual, not just open source licensed product, but make an openly developed project. And so that's why we got going. Here we go. And so, yeah, so for us, really, open source is more than just the license, right? Open source, it's a way you make decisions. It's a way you develop in the open. It's a way you, first of all, like it's a way you separate commercial concerns from others, and that's one of the frustrations we had with Terraform. So and so when we set out to get together and like all pool resources to start working on OpenTofu, we agreed on a certain governance structure and certain decision structure, etc. And then we actually got an email from Chris Anacek. He's the CTO at the Linux Foundation. And Chris was like, hey, I heard you guys were working on like some OpenTF manifesto. Like, is this something that the Linux Foundation could help with? And so like we were thinking to ourselves, why not, if we can get some additional help from them. And they've been incredibly helpful. So I don't know how much you guys have interacted with the LF in the past. They run also the CNCF and lots of cool projects. But what's really important about how the Linux Foundation runs projects is they have like this scaffolding for how open source projects can thrive even in situations like OpenTofu was, when you had a lot of competitors that got together and wanted together to build an open source foundation for us to build on top of. And so the Linux Foundation brings like structures like the TSC, the Technical Steering Committee. They bring together basically just good process, and including all of the rather boring stuff like making sure that OpenTofu gets trademarked in like all the different jurisdictions. So case in point, if you guys ever want to consider building your own open source project, or etc., Linux Foundation is a great home. Big shout out to Jim, Chris, Mike, and the team there for everything they've done there. Okay, so back to OpenTofu. One of the things I really want to convince all of you here is that like 12 months ago, the reason to use OpenTofu was, hey, it's open source and Terraform's not owned anymore. So it was good reason, but overall, like not a great case to make to your management when you want to move your entire enterprise stack to a different product. So over the last 12 months, what we've done is we've made a lot of features that help you write more dependable, more dry code. And we've got a roadmap to continue that so that it's easier and easier for you to just write more maintainable OpenTofu code. Since over the how to put usage has really been on like a quadratic or exponential curve. The first release of 1.6 was in January, and I think we had maybe 10,000 or 20,000 downloads in the first week or something like that, and that was incredible at the time. And then it's been steadily increasing like 10-20% month over month, as measured by the amount of traffic to the provider registry. But it's accelerated a ton over the last 4 months. Since the 1.8 release, we've seen a quadrupling of the amount of traffic that's hitting the registry. So we kind of hit that inflection point about 4 months ago, and it's been super exciting. Like the amount of folks in the community that have been requesting new features, people voting, engaging, just overall has been through the roof. Just the 1.8 release had 1.5 million downloads, and the 1.9 release that came out just a few weeks ago is on track to do a lot more than that. Big shout out to the 160 unique committers that have gotten some form of code into the project. Every time I give this presentation, I update the numbers. It always, the amount of unique, it doubles like every quarter or something like that. We had maybe 36 last year. We have 160 unique committers now, and just folks from around the world contributing to the project. All right, so just a couple things that I wanted to go over for each of the releases, the 1.6 through the upcoming 1.10 release. Again, all of the features we release here fall into like one or two categories. One, help you write better code, or help you write like better dry code, or help you as a provider author or as a software engineer write more dependable code. So in 1.6, the goal, so this came out in like about 12 months ago, right? The goal of 1.6 was to get something out there so that folks that were really passionate about open source could continue using Terraform in an open source manner. And so really there was no major feature that came out with it. But we did release a new provider registry, new module registry to go with it. And there was, I don't know if you guys have dealt with like an old code base like Terraform before, but there's just so many places in which, I mean, there's like just a decade of legacy, right? It's like there's decisions you don't really know why they were made. There's like hard-coded stuff all over the place, and so we don't want, like, you know, for copyright reasons, we couldn't use Terraform, the name, so we had to just go over like tens of thousands of lines of code, replace everything. I mean, it was just a grueling. It took like 4 months of grueling work just to get something that was workable without any kind of new capabilities. So that was intense. But the 1.7 release, that one actually had some new capabilities that we started getting really excited about, and all of these were voted by the community. They all started with an issue created in GitHub, a discussion, voting, and so this was kind of like the 1.7 release was really the first release that for us was an open development, like a truly open source project release. And so that was for us kind of the moment where we went from this is just kind of tedious work to we're actually building something that's better, and it was God gave all of us a lot of meaning to the work that we were doing. So I'm sure you guys are familiar with this, but I'll just highlight the provider defined functions as a really cool way to reduce the amount of duplicate stuff you've got. I also want to talk about state encryption. Actually, yeah, this is a recorded call, so I'll have to be careful here as well. But so state encryption is really important, right? Because who knows? Maybe you've got a misconfigured S3 bucket. Like there's a million things that can go wrong, and like the location where you have all your state files could leak, and then that's, hopefully you guys know this, but that's bad. And so there's, I think in 2015 was the first time that that somebody made a pull request, so like filed an issue on the Terraform initial repo to suggest that that state files could be encrypted. Well, which as a feature makes total sense. Unfortunately, there is a little bit of a what's it called? Competing interests, I guess, between the Terraform open source project and HashiCorp's commercial offerings. We don't know for sure whether that's the reason why that was never considered, but it was suggested in 2015, suggested again in 2016, suggested independently again in 2020, but like that capability never made its way in. And it was the very first thing that in OpenTofu that we added. And so essentially what it is, it just allows you to make sure to encrypt your state file locally so that when you store it, it's stored encrypted. So that if somebody gets access to your S3 bucket, everything inside it is encrypted. Then in 1.8, so that came out I think this summer, a little bit later than this summer. Added a bunch of new features, still kind of in those two buckets of making it easier for you to write dry code, making it easier for you to write tests. The first of those is early variable locals evaluation. And so this allows you just to write it allows your code to be more dry, because then you can use, in early evaluation, you can use your variables or your locals for module sources or encryption settings or other things. So you don't have to like pull from other sources, which has other problems. We also introduced two things in Tofu Test, provider mocking and resource overrides. I encourage you to go to the documentation to read all about these. But essentially, if you're a provider author, or if you want to make your code just more reliable, it provides you with a lot of constructs to write tests for your code. And then 1.9, which came out 2 weeks ago, has two things in it that are important. One, a loop for each that allows you to loop through different providers. This is actually a quick show of hands here. Who here has like some sort of multi-AZ, multi-region, even multi-cloud setup? Yeah, pretty much everyone. Like it's same for us here. One of the things that happens is like the more regions you have, the more zones you have, you end up with like a lot of duplicate code throughout your code base. And so the provider iteration, the for each loop that you have there, allows you to loop through that so that your code just remains more dry. And then the other cool thing that was there that we added is the exclude flag, which is the exact opposite as of the target flag. And so helpful if you want to single out some resources to exclude from your update. All right, so cooler, and a bunch of points here on the 1.10 release. That's probably 2-3 months out. You can go to GitHub. It has you can see all the progress that we're making there on the 1.10 release. This is a really good example of how we do roadmap, right? Well, I guess this is a slide, so you can't click on it. But if you were on GitHub, you could, and so lots of issues. You can debate there. You can see some of them have 39 comments here for one. Like some of them get hotly debated, some of them don't. And we're trying to be as transparent as possible when we develop the project. So if there's any feature you don't know why it's in there, if there's something you don't understand why it's been pushed back or something like that, we're trying really hard not to have any conversations over a Zoom like we did in the beginning. We're trying really hard to have everything written out in the open so that we have a very transparent project, and so that everybody can collaborate with us or join in on the project. Like I was saying at the very beginning, we've had up to now 160 unique contributors to the project. The core team's led by Christian Mesh now. He has taken over, I think, maybe six months ago, something like that, 9 months ago. And he now leads the team of core developers. If you go to, he will be at, I don't know if you guys are planning on being at KubeCon in London in just a month. But he'll be there, happy to introduce you to him. He's incredible. And I think, Ronnie, are you here today? I think she's giving a, so this afternoon there's 3 great talks from folks from the OpenTofu community. Really recommend you attend them. One of them's from Ronnie. She's from the core team, and she's going to be going into more depth in all the new features in 1.9, and then be able to answer some additional questions there. And then who here knows of Martin Atkins? Okay, you guys are hardcore. So Martin, there's a few names that are really important in the Terraform community. Obviously, Michel Hashimoto is one of them, but he's not involved, sadly, in anything anymore. But Martin Atkins is probably the longest serving developer working on the Terraform codebase. We got him to start working on OpenTofu about 4 months ago. So this is like the lead developer for Terraform, moving from HashiCorp to working full-time on OpenTofu. There's a number of other folks that are that have worked on Terraform, the Terraform code base that now work on OpenTofu. So there's like a big movement of folks that really care about open source that have been moving over to working on OpenTofu. There we go. Oh, yeah, thank you. A little bit more about Martin, since a few folks here know him. So Martin's first of all, like there's a non-solicitation agreement, etc. So there's a bunch of legal things I can't say. But right now he's if you follow him on GitHub and what he's working on on OpenTofu, he's working on some like completely new pieces of functionality for OpenTofu that are unrelated to Terraform. And so I really recommend that, like when you see some of his issues, I really recommend you reading through some of the comments that he makes. They're like very well thought out, and he has some fantastic ideas for where to take the project. I want to be very careful what I can say because of like all of the I don't know if you guys know, but like IBM's in the process of acquiring HashiCorp, and like there's a bunch of stuff going on in their neck of the woods, and so the employment agreement with Martin Atkins is complex, and there's so I can't really go into more details there. What I can say is the stuff that he puts out on GitHub is vetted, and so I can point you to it. So I just don't want to say anything that I might know, but that is not public yet. So I want to be careful about that. But if his handle on GitHub is apparently Mart. If you go, I think there might be one from him here. I don't know. Or maybe I didn't hear your question.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Okay.
To be honest, I'm kind of confused about the secrecy. OpenTofu, like all these things should be open, not, just a different company doing things that will end up back in 5 years with a closed fork.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So there's really two things that are separate here. Excellent question. Thanks for asking it. One, there's the Martin Atkins that is now working on OpenTofu, and there's a non-solicitation agreement between him and HashiCorp, and because of that, we have to be very careful on what kinds of things he works on to not infringe or create any liability for the OpenTofu project, because HashiCorp may be very quick they're upset that we hired him away. And so, yeah, I mean, duh. So we have to kind of tiptoe around that, and so that's why he's working on things that are completely different, and that are not that don't require him having. How to put this? Oh, you're putting me in a tricky spot here. We want to make sure that the things he does not require him to have any secret knowledge of how Terraform works. So we need to be. He's working on features that are completely different and not in Terraform. I'll just leave it at that, and hopefully I didn't get myself in trouble. And then for everything else, all of that is developed in the open, and so that's where we have all, like if you go to GitHub and you go to the milestones, that's where you'll see all of the everything that's being proposed or accepted for the 1.10 and subsequent releases. Cool. I'm not getting paged by lawyers, so all good. All right, so migrating to OpenTofu is super easy. The guys, for anybody here who has done it probably knows that. There's a few things to look out for, especially when it comes to some, there's like 3 functions for encoding and decoding that are either implemented differently or not implemented in OpenTofu yet. So just make sure you check the official guide. It's very clear. We spend a lot of time reviewing it, getting feedback on it, so to make it as easy as possible to migrate. But yeah, as always, I mean, do all the DevOps stuff we always do, right? Like backup stuff, test the backups, all of that before making the migration. We've got a Slack going here. If you can type that out, and that will redirect you to the Slack community. You can ask for free stickers there. And here comes the more interesting part. Q&A. So I'd like to actually start by doing a reverse Q&A here. I'd like to ask some questions here to maybe to solicit some feedback. So like the 3 questions I like to get out of communities are, is there anything that I can relay to the core team? Like, are there any concerns you guys have or anything that's not quite clear? I'll take that back to the team, and then we'll make sure that we iterate and improve. That's my role here, or one of my roles here is to make sure that everyone's voice is heard, that we make it as easy as possible to contribute to the project. We want to be very, very transparent where we can, and so like if there's anything, like any process or a decision-making process or anything that's not quite clear, let us know. We'll update the docs. We'll update our process to make it that part even more transparent. And finally, like if there's any improvements that you guys would like to see in OpenTofu in later versions, the best way of getting that in is to make an issue and on the repo. But otherwise, just let me know. So raise your hand. Does anybody have anything that we can relay to the team? Go for it.
I don't want to be trouble, but I'll be honest. I love that you did this part. That's awesome. And I work on a different tool, but I'm still very excited about this, and I follow as
Thank
much
you.
as I can. But it's
Here it comes.
It seems to me if you want to preserve your values of freedom and openness
Yeah.
and not have a new proprietary fork,
Yeah.
the best thing you should do is for all the new code going forward, put it under a copyleft license like Ansible does or something like that, so that it guarantees that even if something goes wrong or some company has a lot more funding, they can't take that work closed again.
Love it. Yeah.
So simple.
Yeah. Love it. 100% agree with you. But there's always a but, and here's the but with one T. Oh, fuck. I'm so sorry. Where was I? Yeah, so on the license, there's really 2 things. One, you can't take an open source license and relicense it under something more permissive than the original.
New code.
Oh, the new code?
New code, not more permissive, more copyleft for all new code.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess we haven't. We could do something like that. Mixing licenses is generally not something that's often done.
Every single day, every single project in the world that has dependencies is mixing licenses.
Okay, I'll take that back to the team. Thanks for the feedback. And the other thing is we don't want to require CLA. We don't want folks to assign copyright and all that bullshit. And so that's another thing that we care about. Thank you. I'll relay that. Did we have other questions? Yes, go for it.
Follow-up to the required CLA with explanation, at least the CNCF part of it
Yeah.
requires CLA. So aren't you like under the same umbrella?
Yeah, I'm not super up to speed on the discussions I've been having that been happening between the team and the CNCF. We do want OpenTofu to eventually become part of the CNCF. I know that there's a license requirement and there's some complexity around the MPL there. So maybe that's the solution to it. I'm not super up to date. I just know that the CNCF has a board. That board meets quarterly to review issues, and so we're working through the different tasks that they've assigned to us to get the OpenTofu in. Did that fully answer your question, or did you have a follow-on? Okay. Anything else I could? Yes, go for it.
I was just wondering, what are plans looking for the OpenTofu registry? I just uploaded the first provider there, and it was really great experience because I just opened a PR and set up.
Yeah.
It was merged 10 minutes later or so.
Okay.
But I stumbled upon that the search seems broken, so you can't scroll because the website crashes.
Fuck.
I know it's a very early alpha, so what do plans in the future look like?
Okay. Yeah, actually, could you? So the question is apparently the search functionality is broken as of right now, I suppose. Okay. Well, I guess I know what I'm going to be doing tonight. So sorry for that experience. I'll as soon as we're done here, I'll double check and figure that out. Thank you. Anybody else have live bug reports? Making me sweat bullets here. Okay, good question.
You're such a young project that is concentrating on transparency and you're trying to set policy that hopefully will last for years. Have you thought about policies regarding events related to the project not happening in what's the politically correct way of putting this? Fascist authoritarian states?
Okay. So I'm American, so I know very much, well, I feel very attacked here. Good question. So the repeating question is like, are we having any plans on having events or community events that are outside, I think you mean the US, but it could be other places too. So I think the closest thing we've got is KubeCon. I mean, there's ConfigManagement Camp. There's lots of events. But the closest thing we've got related to that, it would be KubeCon. The next one's in London. There's a KubeCon in Asia every year. There's one in Europe every year. There's one in North America every year. Open source. We haven't had a presence there. We should. Good question. Yeah, I'll take that back to the team to see how we can increase our presence in truly democratic states. All right, got to wait till the midterms. Oh my God. All right. Yes, go for it.
Well, I'm wondering about your business model. You have paid core developers, but you want to keep it open source. Corp did kind of the same, but they had to close source it because of their business model. How are you going to ensure that this is not going to happen again?
Yeah, so the question is like how we as a community are going to ensure that the project is like long-lasting despite all of the commercial pressures, etc. Good question. There's now, I think, there's still 2/3 of contributions that come from a company that has a vested interest in seeing the success of OpenTofu, but the remaining third comes from organizations that either work, like for example GitLab or Oracle, or organizations that don't make money directly from OpenTofu being successful, but is required for like the health of the ecosystem. So there's still a third of development that comes, and there's still about a third of the development that comes from such sources. I think there's I run a commercial company on top of that provides services on top of OpenTofu. I think there's pretty clear separation between what's the responsibility of OpenTofu and all of the stuff that OpenTofu needs to be deployed very widely in a large organization. And I think that separation is such that like you can have a very useful long-term project in OpenTofu, and you can also make differentiated commercial projects on top. I think in addition to that, it's the needs of government and enterprise organizations are just very different, and so I think that difference also provides opportunity for more startups or more companies providing services. And then there's also service providers that provide commercial support for OpenTofu. So there's a number of ways of making money, and so long as commercial organizations can make money on top of or around the project, I think OpenTofu will continue to thrive. Yeah, did you have a follow-on question or no? Okay, cool. Yes, go for it.
I had a quick look at the migration guide. It looks like you're pretty compatible with Terraform still.
Yep.
You also have the documentation that says all the .x releases will be pretty compatible with each other
Yep.
as well. What are the plans with future compatibility in regards to Terraform?
Great question. So the question is like the plans for future compatibility. I think by order of importance, like number one is OpenTofu has to work. It has to work with every single provider out there. And so like when we think about like providers they're the reason we use Tofu or Terraform to begin with, right? I think the next talk, Ben Ford, he's going to be talking a little bit in more detail about that. But number one is making sure that that Tofu is compatible with all the providers. Number two, making sure that the migrations are as easy as possible. And so we've got implemented clean room design to make sure that like when Terraform adds a particular piece of functionality that the community would like to see in Tofu as well, we've got a whole process by which we have the functionality being described, and then we have some folks that only read that description without looking at any Terraform code, and from that they will implement similar functionality. We've done this before. It's a very well-known industry term. Did that fully answer your question, or did you have a follow-on?
No, that's good.
Okay, cool.
There was one more hand at the back, and that's the last question.
Oh, okay.
So there was someone at the back who had a hand up just now. You still have a question? Anyone else have the last question?
Yes, the gentleman in the back.
How about HCL itself? Because HCL is still managed by Terraform, right? Manage configuration files.
Yeah, so HCL is indeed still open source. If they decide that they want to pull the rug on us again on that, then we'll fork that too. Cool. We ran out of time. Just one last thing before I get kicked out. There's another cool project that actually it's thriving on its own as well. Open source fork of Vault. It's called OpenBow. It's sponsored by IBM, which is but it's also sponsored by GitLab, and Alexander Schiel is the name of the TSC chair for it. He actually used to work on Vault at HashiCorp, so he's also jumped to a competing product. All right, I'm being kicked out.
Thank you.